now. So Ash, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
No, I'm all good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
That's all right, you're welcome. So for anyone that doesn't know who you are or your background, how have you got to where you are in the industry so far?
Well, yeah, if anyone doesn't know me, my name's Ash Burley. Most people know me through that's what's called the PTD Ninja, which is a bit of a story behind that, which I'm sure I can share with you. But I generally work for PT Distinction. I do a lot of their support stuff, and I look after their Facebook group and their interviews and all that kind of stuff on there. And I also run a company called PTD Ninja, which is a support service for PT Distinction users, and we help them, basically trainers all over the world, set up their business with PT Distinction and leverage it to grow their business online. That's in essence what I do. In terms of how I got here, with the PTD stuff, it was a complete and utter fluke, believe it or not. So my background's actually in adventure coaching. I started off coaching people a long time ago now, adventure athletes, so like rock climbing, kayaking, that kind of thing. And I didn't really have too much of an interest in personal training. And my dad was very overweight. He was like 23 stone and is 6 foot, so 23 stone, 6 foot. And he got diagnosed with angina because of his lifestyle, and he wanted some help. So he said, oh, with what I was doing with the adventure coaching and the athlete stuff, he's like, can you help? And I said, yeah, I'll try and help out. And I started working with him, and over about 1.5 years, he got down to just under 16 stone, and touch wood, has never had an angina attack since. And that kind of inspired me to get into personal training. So I started doing that, working in the gym, eventually went to go and set up my own gym. We then bought another studio with my business partner at the time, then went into kind of hybrid training where we was doing some online stuff with the people inside the studio. I then started to move on to do more online stuff for my business partner, AD. He carried on looking after the gym side of it. That kind of grew from there. And I went through loads of different softwares. Like I know you mentioned earlier about like my PT Hub. I used them. I mentioned loads of like Trainerize. I used loads of different ones that were out there at the time. This was a while back. Even Google Sheets and things like that. Like used them all. And I found PT Distinction, started using them, and believe it or not, I actually left them originally in the early days when they first started out. Made some of my own stuff, and then eventually went back to PT Distinction. As I do stuff with PTD, the business went really well online. Was doing pretty well with the online stuff, and they started a Facebook group. I went to go and join that Facebook group, as you do. And as like people asking questions inside there, as you do in the group, you get involved, you try and answer and help people out. And I started answering a few questions that people were doing. And then Tim, who actually owns PT Distinction, he's like, how did you do that with our software? Like they didn't even realize they could do some of these things with the software. They did. And that's kind of how the conversation started. And it kind of grew from there. We started doing masterclasses for them to show them how to do it. And then they realized that I was okay with my online business anyway. So we started doing stuff to help people grow those businesses as well within there. And yeah, relationship kind of grew from that. And I say complete fluke, basically. Like he just kind of found us in this group and our relationships kind of grew from there. And yeah, and then I've just been working with PTD ever since.
Nice. I suppose like it's nice that that's happened because you went in with the intention of just literally helping other people, and then obviously opportunities come from that because they've seen that you're giving value to the rest of the people in the group, which is great, isn't it? That's what it's about. That's what personal trainers and coaches and stuff like that should be doing daily. Like on my Instagram, for example, I just give out free information, like trying to help other PTs grow their business, because then in turn, when a PT is asking another personal trainer who they should do a course with, they generally point them my way because they know that I'm going to help them long term. Same with you. If you're sort of helping people grow their business, then, but without really sort of, yes, you're making money from it now, but at first you weren't. So people would have been sending people your way because you actually generally care about helping other people, which is great. And it's, there's not that many people in the industry, unfortunately, as you know yourself, that sort of have that take on it, is there? But it's great that you do that.
Yeah, I think it's such an important thing to do as well. Like, I think if you go into any business, but especially our business, and as a trainer, like if you have to care, and I think most people do generally as trainers who do care about the clients, at least when they start off. And I think when you're doing anything, especially online, when you're putting content out there and putting information out there, I think if you generally go into that wanting to help the people you're speaking to and generally want to go and do that, then work and pay and money and the return will come from it anyway. Because like you say, you will literally start attracting people will want to work with you, and they will literally ask you. Like a lot of people speak to us sometimes about the sales side of it and what we do. and they talk about how they structure sales calls and that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, I don't really need to structure my sales calls, because the focus is around putting out good information and really wanting to help people. And every time I have a conversation with somebody, I'm generally just there to try and help them. I'll never try and really sell them anything. And they'll literally ask. And that's the point you kind of want to be in, I think, when you're doing this stuff. If you just genuinely want to help people, they will come to you and they'll start wanting to work with you. And I think it's an important aspect of this business anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's the thing. Like, speaking of sort of sales scripts and that, you see people trying to sell scripts and stuff like that, but that doesn't work for everyone. And like you said, it's if you're trying to help people on that call and they still get that sort of inkling from you that's the, like, I sort of tell my students how to sell and, you know, how to sort of be genuine and stuff like that. But whenever I'm doing a call, it's almost at the point where they're like, so how do I sign up to do a course with you? And I'm almost like, go away, think about it. If you've got any questions, come back to me, because I don't want to sell to them. So like the call sort of almost ends with like, oh, no, don't sign up today. Go, keep going. You know, there's other courses. Go and look at other courses. If you still like the look of our course, come back. But it's like I said, it's more like it's that, you know, discovery call and turbo call and all these sort of terms. And you just know that if you go on them, you're going to be sold to. Whereas if you just sort of have a feeling that you're speaking to someone genuine, that's, you know, people by people, good old saying, isn't it? I think that sort of comes across in your calls. And then, like I said, you haven't got to sell, because they're buying into you just as much as your product.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you can do that, and even before then, like, just establish yourself as that kind of genuine person that does want to help. Like, the sales, it's not that difficult. I don't think they're that difficult to come by when you do it that way, because people do trust you beforehand. They do get to know who you are, and they do start to like what you do. And then, eventually they'll come to you and they'll actually just want to work with you. Like, you literally, we call it kind of like attraction marketing, if you like. That's what I tend to call it, because you are literally just attracting people because they're generally trying to help them. And then eventually you just get rewarded for it. just for being a good person.
No, definitely. And so you said about the PTD Ninja. What's the story behind that?
So PTD Ninja, it didn't used to be called that originally. It was just called PT Distinction Coaching, just an idea that we could coach alongside PT Distinction. And that came about because Tim, when he found us inside their Facebook group and asked us to work with PT Distinction anyway, I first came and got involved with their support side. So I do some of their techie stuff with them, because I've really got a technical background, but I do really enjoy that. I'm quite, I don't know, geeky, if you like. Like, I just love tech. I always have done in technology and everything. And so I started helping out with that side of it. And we started running these things called masterclasses. And these were free masterclasses offered to all PT Distinction members that showed them how to use the software and leverage it against their business. And as we're doing them, some people would message us and they'll say, look, can you just help us set this up? Like, can you just help us go into PTD, show us what to do, set these things up? And I was like, well, yeah, if you want to. And then honestly, the first one I did, I said, I'll just do it for you. Like, I'll go in there and do it. And I didn't even ask for this, but funny enough, the guy just PayPal'd me some money over just to say thanks for doing it. And that happened a number of times. So I was just like, well, why don't we do something with this? Spoke to PT Distinction about it. And they said, we can do it. I said, we'll keep masterclasses and your support stuff under PT Distinction, but why not set us up as something different? It could be like just a recommended company and stuff we work with. And that's kind of how PTD coaching was born. Started growing from there. And then, believe it or not, there's the guy that actually works with us now called Jed. So he's one of the guys that works with us on PTD Ninja. He was actually one of my clients, one of my early clients with PTD coaching. And he coined us PTD Ninja inside the Facebook group. And within about a week, everyone just started calling us that. And then that's kind of how that name came about for it. But yeah, basically what PTD Ninja does is it helps personal trainers leverage PTD against their business in order to grow their business online and master their online business. And we've been a bit of a data geek, if you like, as well. We've been quite fortunate because we get to work with so many different trainers. We work with over 1,000 trainers now, helping them move online using PT Distinction. We get to see all the data. So we get to see what works well, what doesn't work well from the sales point of view using PT Distinction, from sales in general and marketing, the actual program delivery, how to deliver stuff effectively online for people, because there is a difference in terms of how to effectively deliver an online program that's scalable compared to what you may do in person, like what things actually work, and see the data and what gets the best results for clients. So we've got data from the better part of 10,000 clients now, technically, to see what works and what doesn't, and also 1,000 trainers to see actually what's working in their business and what isn't online. And we've used that to kind of develop systems that we realized can actually really help people. And those systems led to something called the 101 course, which is a course that people can basically sign up to, and it gives them everything that we've seen work for online trainers using PT Distinction mainly. So from the sales point of view, from marketing to setting up the systems, all the automations inside the software, the content we see work well that gets results, and how you can tweak and adapt that to suit your particular niche and market as well. So we pulled all that together, and that's kind of how the PT Ninja and the 101 course came about to what it is now, basically.
Nice. So with regards to online, obviously we're having this conversation on what's the date today? God, blimey, don't even know.
Oh, damn.
7th January.
Except for Jamie, yeah. Slow month, isn't it?
I don't know what month it is. I don't know what day it is. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's all blurring into one.
So obviously everyone should really have some sort of online offering. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, I don't mean Zoom, jumping around in your living room. I don't like that. Sort of, like sort of the more database side of coaching, which isn't for everyone. But what's your take on online coaching, and what makes a good online coach in your opinion?
So first of all, I 100% agree. I think everyone, especially now more than ever, needs to have at least some online element to their business. And we've been kind of mentioning this a lot, especially since the first lockdown, that if you're not, these things are going to happen again. Things aren't going to change anytime soon, and you need to be prepared for it to happen. A lot of trainers have done that, but a lot of trainers haven't done that as well. And I think if you're watching this now, listening to this now, you really need to think about putting at least some online element in there, and not backing off from what's happening, because I think at the moment there's a huge opportunity for personal trainers to move online. There's a lot of clients out there, there's a lot of people out there that need help at the moment and support doing it. So now's one of the best times ever, I think, to go online. So if you are thinking about it, definitely go and do it. And if you're maybe in a gym and you're thinking you want to cut back, don't cut back on the online stuff. That this is where your market's going to be, at least the next few months. So yeah, don't give up. Just maybe think about doing it. In terms of what I think makes a good online coach is that part of it, the coach side of it. So a lot of people compare the idea of a personal trainer to a coach. So sometimes when you're doing personal training, generally speaking, a lot of people think I'm going into the gym, I'm going to go give them a workout to go and complete. I'm going to stand there with them, make sure their form's good, their technique's good, and they're safe in what they're doing, and basically make sure what they're doing is correct for them. But what really actually happens, or the better trainers that tends to happen, is you do that, but you also have conversations with them about other things in their life, like the habits they're doing, maybe a bit about their nutrition and things like that. And sometimes this almost comes to like a subconscious level. Like we don't really think we're just doing it, we're just having those conversations. And that's generally how they tend to get better results when you're in person. And I think what an online coach does, or an online trainer does well, is they manage to take actually what they really do there and put it into an online environment. The biggest mistake I think that a lot of trainers do when they do that is they try and take everything that they do there, put it in an online environment, and give it to their client straight away. They literally just go, here's the training program, here's how to do it safely, here's like all your videos, here's a 52-page PDF on counting calories and tracking macros and all that kind of stuff. Here's all this information, and away you go with it. And I can almost guarantee you that won't work for 95% of people, because it'll be too much information. It'll be almost like drinking from a fire hose, pretty much. They're just not going to take any of that information or any of that water in, if you like. So a good coach will actually really look at what they do in person, which is slowly have these conversations over time and actually start building up on what they've done in the past. It's kind of like, let's say you go and train someone in the gym and you want to teach somebody how to snatch. You're not just going to get a beginner and go and tell them how to do a snatch. You're going to start breaking that down and do small things that build on top of each other to create this end result. And that's exactly what we need to do online. And the better trainers are the trainers that can do that. They'll sit there and think, I'm going to give this amount of information here, and then this is going to progress onto the next one. This is going to progress onto the next one. And it will slowly start to build up over time. And it almost has this kind of start slow, finish fast approach, if that kind of makes sense in terms of the delivery of that. And I think if you can do that, then you'll do well and you'll get decent results for your clients online.
Yeah, definitely. I think like I had a similar conversation with two different people yesterday about TDEE calculators. Like on their Instagram and their Facebook, they're talking about these calculators. Like, oh, go to my bio, do this. I was like, you need to go all the way back, like at least a week, and start them off like, what is a calorie? This is how you track. Because like the term TDEE is going to go straight over 9 out of 10 people's heads.
Yeah.
If you're telling them to go and click a link to like play with this calculator, they don't know what that is. So like you just said there, it's good to sort of break it down, take a few steps back and educate them why they need that in their life. And it's the same with, and that's what online coaching is. I think so many people sort of make it, maybe like there's two different sides to it. They either make it look too snazzy and flashy that the clients are like, Jesus Christ, that's too complicated for me. Or coaches actually think that it should be like that, so they put off doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think online coaching, it's the term online you need to sort of get past, because online coaching could be a Zoom call, it could be an email, a Facebook group, it could be an app. That's all online. Like Facebook is online, but everyone uses that without even battering an eyelid.
Yeah.
We do it subconsciously, probably. But I think having your clients in an online Facebook group and dropping in accountability, hints, tips, advice every single day, that technically is online coaching. Obviously, what your guys do and what I sort of say to my students to do is adding in the app access, the Google Sheets, the weekly calls, the check-ins. That's, like you said, that's just more accountability, because, and that's sort of my argument with face-to-face training in general. Like if you had a client that you're seeing once a week, that's 1 hour out of a whole week that you're seeing them. How are you servicing that client between that and the next session? Some coaches and trainers are like, well, I don't, but they can go online and look at information. Well, that's pointless, because they're your client. You need to be servicing them all those other days until they come back to you. And that's where, like you said, that's where online coaching can come in massively, whether it's just a Facebook support group, like I said, or at this time, January 2021, if you're ever listening to this in the future. So we're on flipping lockdown again. Like, how are people exercising? How are people being educated? How are they learning from you as a coach? And it hasn't got to be all singing or dancing. If you're sort of looking at an app and thinking, Jesus Christ, Carl and Ash are telling me I should download this app and do this, it hasn't got to be that way.
No.
It's what suits the client, because even you, I'm sure some of your guys and some of my guys as well, their clients don't want an app. They don't want fancy stuff. But all the content you've got, if you can send it on email, flipping, if they're really old fashioned, you can type it out and post it to them. It's sort of like, it's still that information that they need from you, isn't it?
Yeah. There's some interesting things you mentioned there, actually, especially about the PT in person, doing the kind of 1 session a week, or even 2 sessions a week, and what you do to service them after. I think even last year and the year before, I think if you wasn't really offering a hybrid element, which I was not sure what I mean by hybrid, is this idea that you can train people in person, but also give them support outside of it. If you're not doing that, I do think you're kind of missing the trick a little bit. And I've had the same conversations with people before as well, who have said, we'll get the information online somewhere. The problem is not information. Like, I could literally go back and say, well, in that case, I can get the information about that workout you've just prescribed to somebody online. Information is not the issue. If anything, we've got too much information everywhere and misinformation everywhere. The two most important things, implementation and accountability. And it's our job as a trainer and a coach to help somebody implement that information and hold them accountable to taking action against that information. And that's what a coach does. And that's what you can need to do online. And like you said, it doesn't really matter how you do that, as long as you have systems in place in order to allow that to happen. And like anything, if you give somebody too much information too quickly, you can't implement it. You can't do it. It's like learning a language. If I go and told you here's all these like French words, here's all these Italian words, here's all these Spanish words, like go and learn all them now, like you'll be terrible at it. But if I said to you, right, let's just start with some basic French words now, and then next week we'll talk about forming that into a sentence, and then we'll learn French first, and then we'll go move on to Spanish, and then we'll move on and do the same thing. You will learn it much quicker, and it will sink in. It's exactly the same principle with what we're trying to do here. So I think yeah, information is important, but it's also about how they can implement that information into their lives, and then how you can hold them accountable to taking action against that information that's inside there. And I think the key part of that as well, which you did mention there as well, is not everybody's going to need that. And that's knowing that it's knowing your avatar, it's knowing your ideal client. And I know a lot of people will say, I don't know my ideal client, I work with everybody. And that's fine. You can work with lots of people if you really want to, but it is easier, especially online, to work with a smaller group of people, a smaller type of person, a smaller avatar, if you like. But by understanding who your client is, it allows you to address those kind of things. So if maybe, say, going to, I use my dad for an example, like literally, I think it's quite a good example here. Like, he was heavily overweight. Like I say, he was like nearly 23 stone at the time. He doesn't cook. He doesn't really know what proteins, carbs, and fats are. He very really understood exactly what calories are. If I went to him, and bear in mind, he's never really tracked anything. If I said to him, go and download MyFitnessPal, I want you to eat 2,200 calories a day, he'd be like, what? Like, what's the calorie? How am I going to track this? You're asking me to track all this food. I don't even know what's in that food in the first place. Like, that's knowing your client. On the other hand, though, if I'm working with, like I used to work with athletes beforehand, like an adventure, I could go to one of them and say, go and download MyFitnessPal and go and track this, because they know what it is. So understanding who your clients are is going to make it so much easier to understand what it is you need to break down, at what point on that journey they can actually start taking that information, how they're going to implement it. It's going to change how you get somebody to absorb that information, and it's also going to change how you hold them accountable to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's and sort of, as you're saying that, you could even break it down, couldn't you? Because like that person at the sort of where you want them at the top end of the scale of playing around with fancy apps and stuff like that might not understand it. But then underneath that, the sort of, like you said a second ago, like getting them to that point is all about education. So it could be a live seminar, it could be a webinar, sort of something web-based like an email, it could be a Facebook group where you're telling them what calories, protein, carbs, fats, etc. are, so they can understand it. Then you could give them like maybe a little cheat sheet of breaking it down and giving them amounts versus calories and stuff like that. And then once they've got that in their head, and again, it might take another video after that, but then the next one could be like, if you find this useful and you've got this sort of sorted now, here's another video or another sort of guide of how to use MyFitnessPal or My PT Hub or PT Distinction, for example. Because I always say, again, if the way of the world at the minute where everyone is sort of going online, and some trainers are just throwing it out there and going, oh, my clients don't like it, they don't understand it. Or what have you done to help them understand it? Like, it's not just a case of download this app, it's easy to follow. Yeah. It is for you, me, and someone else. But the client might need a Zoom call. They might need a video. They might need detailed, like step-by-step guide in an email. So it's just sort of thinking where, like you said, where you want them to be and the slow steps you need to get them there. And that's the same with, again, like I'd say to my guys about Google Sheets, like you said, that you've used yourself in the past. Some Google Sheets, you could be asking them their steps that they've done a day, their exercise they've done a day, calories broken down into carbs, proteins, fats, how many hours of sleep they've had, water, etc., etc. So the spreadsheet could go flipping, on and on and on. But the main things that matter might only be those first two columns. So if you're overwhelming them by saying you need to fill up all 50 columns, like,
it's just too much.
Yeah, exactly. But then again, it's keeping it basic. Like I said, knowing your client. You can service a very advanced athlete that wants, a male over 30 that wants to lose body fat, might know how to do all that, but then the exactly same client might not know how to do any of that spreadsheet. So it's just focusing on what they do know and guiding them towards that. And again, the great word that you've said there a couple of times is accountability. Like I keep saying to people at the moment, you're all accountability coaches. You're not personal trainers, you're not fancy online coaches. You're just there to hold their hand through this process, guiding them to your systems and education and stuff like that to get that end result.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's one of the advantages I quite like PTD for is that it does give you the flexibility to do that. For example, one of our most popular programs that we tend to recommend for people that work with the general public, I should say. Obviously, that can be broken down to lots of different niches, but generally, general public, as you can imagine, we have a program inside there where we don't even get them to download the app to start off with. We just get them to purchase and onboard them with a simple email because they understand it, with a little video, give them a little tour. And the first thing we literally do is ask them just to fill in their park queues. I don't talk about anything else. Next day, we say you can go and download this, but don't worry about it just yet. And then we start doing a little video, then helping them out with like just tracking their food. Then we get to take photos of the food for like a week, just keep it nice and simple. And then we start building upon that. So you can literally really break it down and make it so even if you do want to use like fancy software. I mean, to give context, I mean, like a lot of people sometimes that we speak to, they worry that if they're going to sell something online and they're not going to give them all this information, all this stuff too quickly and talk about this fancy stuff, that they can't charge a decent amount of money for it. And that's completely wrong. That is completely wrong. Less is a lot more with this, and they're going to get better results from it. And understanding that basically your job, like you say, is to hold them accountable, to make sure they can implement any information you give them in order to get them a result. That's literally what our job is as coaches, because otherwise, why are they paying us? They're not paying us to be a friend. Like they're paying us because they want to get something out of working with you. And I think that's an important thing to understand. I mean, in the past before, like I've obviously used lots of tech and things for it, but I've had clients before where I've literally just used Facebook because that's what they use. I asked them to take photos of their meals and send it through to me. And the accountability was just send it through to me. And I even said to them, I'm not going to check it every day. I'll reply back to you, but you'll see my tick come up. So all I did is open it and look at it. And to be honest with you, I didn't even necessarily have to go and look at what they were eating, because all I do at the end of the week is I jump on a quick 20-minute call with them, pull them up on the screen and just go, what do you think about how your meals went this week? And they'll say this and this. Okay, what would you like to change next week? This and this. Okay, cool. Let's do that next week. Send photos through me and we'll see how you get on. That's literally it. And I did that for like 8 weeks with somebody, and they lost loads of weight. They felt so much better because of it, and they understood what they were doing. We never tracked anything really. We never like counted calories. We just got them to make small changes. And then even with the workouts, like this person had a kid and they didn't want to spend time away from the children. So she got to get a Davina McCall tape, the DVD thing, put that on and just do it with the kids inside there. We do that 3 times a week, and just drop me a little selfie when you're done, just to say that you've done it. And that's it. And that's enough to get some people results. So you don't have to overcomplicate it. Like you can really simplify it, and you can massively overcomplicate it. It is literally just about understanding who your client is and adapting that program to suit that individual client. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to use them, which is obviously a love PT distinction, but there are going to be times where you don't need to use that, and you can progress them onto it eventually. Like she did eventually go onto that, but it wasn't right for her at the time. So I adjusted the program to suit the client at the time.
Yeah, and that's sort of leads me quite nicely into another question I've got for you, which is like different packages, because obviously that was technically online coaching what you're doing there, but like I said, on a very basic format. So there's always people, like, again, as you can imagine, just like yourself, we have so many different conversations each week with PTs or people that want to become PTs. And someone was saying the other day that they're charging £80 or under £80 for a 12-week program, where they're basically doing changing the person's program on a weekly basis, and they've got accountability calls and stuff like that. And I was like, £80, that's like ridiculous. Like if you work that out on an hourly rate, you probably owe them money. It's like, do you know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. But they sort of said, well, I'm only doing basic stuff with them. But I was like, that basic stuff is probably changing their life.
Yeah.
In that sort of 12 weeks, whatever it was, if they've lost like a couple of stone, if you'd said to them at the beginning, right, Ash, if I'm going to lose, I can help you lose 2 stone. What does that look like? How much would you pay for you to lose 2 stone in body fat in the next 8 weeks? You'd probably turn around and go, well, I don't know, 200 quid.
Yeah.
But you're sort of undercharging yourself because you think it's not a very good program. But then if you've got something that they need, then you should be charging for that. And I don't mean that in a sort of horrible money grabbing way, but you've got to sort of understand that your time is money. And, your basic package could be, like you said, it's almost that accountability call. She was doing exercise elsewhere. Mm-hmm. All she was doing with you was sort of, you were there to sort of keep her on track.
Yeah.
So what sort of do you say to your guys about packages, like a sort of a completely online, again, just for example, an 8-week program, there it is, see you later, do it yourself? Do you have sort of different packages that you go up after that, or what's the sort of your take on those?
Yeah, so I do like the idea of packages to some extent. I think the first thing I'd like to mention about packages is the most common thing I tend to see when people sign up with us is, especially with our higher, what we call our gold done for you package, which is where we basically create whatever anybody wants. But these days, I'll always give feedback on whether I think it's a good idea or not. And one of the most common things we tend to see is, I want to do 3 packages. I want to do nutrition, I want to do fit, I want to do exercise, and I want to do both together. And I always say to people, like, stop. To me, I would never do that, because for the most part, unless you're very specific in who you want to work with and that would work for them, for the majority of people, the majority of the public, they're probably going to need all 3 of them in order to get the best result. And if you was to offer a program that's maybe just exercise, and they go out there and do that, they follow that program, maybe you hold them accountable to it, and they don't quite get the results that you promised them because they're just doing exercise, whose fault is it? Because it's not their fault, it's your fault. Because one thing we need to remember is that they're coming to us because we are experts, and they're coming to us because they don't know any better, and they need us to tell them what they need to do. And I think that's something we need to understand as coaches. Like, we are the experts. We're the ones that are helping them get to where they want to be, and they're coming to us because they literally do not know where to go in order to get the result that they're doing. And I think when we understand that, it's much easier for us to think about the packages we put together. So whenever I'm thinking about packages, I always think, okay, what is this end result that this person I want to help them get to? And what is the minimum I need to include in any of my packages in order to get them that result? So even if I'm doing, like, I don't know, let's say the bronze, silver and gold package, the bronze package might be a minimum one. The minimum amount of information and application of that information and how you're going to hold them accountable needs to be the absolute minimum that's going to get the result for that particular person based on who your avatar is and who you want to work with. So that's always what I would start with. And that should include a level of activity. It doesn't necessarily have to be, depends on your client, obviously, but it doesn't necessarily have to be workouts in the gym. It could be, depending who you work with. Then it needs to be some kind of nutrition-based stuff inside there as well, looking at how you can change the way, their eating habits. It doesn't necessarily have to be counting calories, but it could be just tracking with habits. It just, again, depends on the type of person you're working with. So that kind of stuff needs to be in there, and there needs to be a way to hold them accountable to anything you ask them to do inside that program. So all the packages should have that. I don't, even with fully automated stuff, and one of the things we do a lot of is very automated programs. But because we use the likes of PTD, you could use other things as well, but the likes of PTD, we can have a very high level automation program. And if we know our clients well enough, we can deliver this stuff in a fully automated way. So we have a common thing is a 12-week program that is literally fully automated, that in theory you could give to a client and they could go through it all and they would still get pretty decent results, like pretty amazing results from it, because built into that we use videos, swipe files like you mentioned there, all structured in a way that build on top of each other. So for example, we'll start on this first week tracking food. We'll then ask them to reassess their own food diary because they've taken photos in the app and they can go back and assess it themselves. We give them a little training video and a document showing them how to do it using hand portions to give an idea on sizes and the different foods to choose from. We ask them to make 3 changes the following week. They go and do that. And all we do is we set like a little habit checking just to say, have you made these 3 changes this week? So they become more aware of what they're eating and what they're doing. Same with their exercises they can choose from. We ask them to, if it's automated, it's a bit different because you might, they'll be picking stuff, but you help guide them in the right direction to what they want to do. We then focus on breakfast, we then focus on lunch, then focus on dinner. So literally 4 weeks in, we haven't even yet really tracked a calorie. All we've been doing is looking at how to make small changes in their different meals for the day, taking photos of them so they're aware of it. Then we might get to download something like MyFitnessPal, then have a go just tracking their meals. And then after that, like literally 6 weeks in, we might think about setting them some calorie targets based on what they do. If it's automated, you can technically use calculators. I'm not a massive fan of them, but you can. If you wanted to really tweak it, so that might be your lower package. So you want like a higher price package, you could use exactly the same format. The difference is you would be there giving them some feedback. So you give some feedback on those meals that they've been eating, little changes they can make to their breakfast, their lunch and their dinner. And then you'll maybe set calories for them and help them select the workouts. So you pick the workouts they would do. You could have a lot of these things pre-made. And then maybe your top package could be exactly the same program again, because again, this is the minimum they need to get a result. But what you're doing is do exactly the same thing. You make tweaks and adjustments, and then you might include a coaching call every week or every 2 weeks in there for 20 minutes and just work on what they've done in the past. That's generally how I would structure stuff. So baseline blueprint that gives them the minimum they need to get a result, add a bit more customization, on it, and a bit more accountability, like you can check them with emails or in-app messages. That's what we do with PTD. And then on the top level, exactly the same thing, but you might do coaching calls with them. But I'd never charge 80 quid for any of them, ever, for it. I mean, trying to give context again, the one I mentioned about the Facebook stuff, messaging and stuff like that, that was an £1,800 program. And I was literally just using Facebook and calls with her at the end of it, and a Davina McCall DVD. Like, it's not about the information so much you give them, it's about what you're helping them achieve and helping them to where they need to get to. And that's literally it. And that, to me, a lot of trainers might think that's hardly anything you're giving them, but that's actually more time on my part. If I compare that to something like what I mentioned there with all these tracking and things like that inside an app, I can build that inside there, and I can technically take a really back step. I can go in on a Friday and just quickly see what the difference is for most people. And I can probably deal with like 50, 60 clients on that kind of program in about, I don't know, 20 minutes on a Friday afternoon if I wanted to. But then if I'm asking them to message me on my personal Facebook, which means they can message me at any time, technically speaking, even if I'm not going to reply back, you're mentally there in that program all the time. And you're going to give little assessments back. You're having these coaching calls with them. That's more of your time, more of your expertise than what might be on one of these automated programs, which is why it cost her more money. But that's just what it was at the time. So yeah, I don't think people need to be afraid of charging what their worth is and what they can help somebody achieve.
No, so definitely. And what's so the sort of the package ideas that you've just gone through there that sort of most of the coaches are doing through PTD, what's the sort of rough, I know it's going to be very different because what the coaches charge, but do you see what they charge, or is there a recommended price that you would charge for like the sort of the more do-it-yourself at home small package, the hybrid, or the full-blown sort of all singing, all dancing package at the top? Have you got like a rough price that you guide them to?
Yeah, so well, kind of. So again, it depends on a couple of things with pricing. So we do have an average price that most people charge. There's different kind of packages which I'll talk about in a second. But what we tend to do with packages and pricing is try and help the trainer understand how to price properly. Because for somebody, if somebody went to me and said, how much should I charge this program? Like, it's literally like we go, how long's a piece of string? Because I don't know what your overheads are. Like, do you employ staff? How many like systems and software do you need to go and do it? What other overheads do you might have inside your business? What country in? Do you have to charge tax? Like, there's so many different things involved just on that side of it, on your general overheads that you need to take into account. Then it's like, okay, so how much time do you spend with your actual client on each one, and how much does it cost to service that particular client in that program? So for example, the higher package I talked about there, you might have maybe a 20-30 minute coaching call, say 15 minutes to prep either side of that coaching call, because realistically that's what's going to happen. And you might spend another 15-20 minutes tweaking the program as well. So even if you sit around an hour to an hour and 20 a week per high ticket client or high, gold client, if you like, next one down might be 15 minutes, 20 minutes a client for the middle package, and the bottom one's automated. So realistically, you're probably going to look at like 50, 60 clients at once. You could do. So you might be talking a few minutes a client. You need to put something in there anyway, because there's always something. Because you have things like customer service stuff, like on more automated programs, you might not be doing a lot of coaching, but you will get customer service stuff. Like, how do I log into my app? My login details aren't working. That kind of stuff, it happens. So you need to account for that somewhere. And then you also have to look at client acquisition. There's always a cost to acquire a client, and you can roughly work out what that's going to be per client over time, but that needs to be accounted for in your overall cost for that client. Because if you don't account for that, that's eating away at your profits for that client that you brought in. So I always try and get them to look at the different costs that are involved first, like their overheads, the acquisition, and the actual cost for the client. And that's where we generally start from. We know then roughly from that figure that that's going to give us an idea of the minimum we kind of need to charge for it. And at that point, we can look at two ways of doing this. One way is to, if you're working in person, which most people tend to when they come to us, they've probably worked in person beforehand. We always look at what they charge first, because one of the things that I always find quite amazing is that, and I think you kind of alluded to it there a minute ago, that person, I'm guessing, was an in-person client, and they're doing all this stuff there, and they've charged 80 quid for this 12-week program, and what they may be spending an hour, 2 hours a week, maybe more with a client. Like, how much do you charge for an in-person client if you're going for an hour training session? Like, if you're charging, say, 50 quid an hour. I don't know, whatever it depends where you are, obviously, in the country. Like down London, it's a bit more expensive. Like up where we are, it's like 25, 30 pounds. Like it depends where you are in the country. But either way, if you look at that, like you can't have your time cheaper because it's online. Like you might as well just not do it and go and carry on working in person. You might as well. So you've got to make sure that at least makes it worthwhile, because the worst thing will happen is if you sell a program like that to somebody, you promise all this stuff and you want to customize it, and then other trainers come along, other clients, come along, and they want to work with you in person, and you having to turn them down because you haven't got time because you're working for half the amount of money or even less sometimes online. You're going to start resenting that process, resenting that client. And I promise you, as a coach, that will make your job a lot harder, and you'll probably not get the best results from it, because they will know. They'll literally know that they'll know that you're feeling that way about it, and you don't want to be in that position. So you want to make sure that you always think about what it is you're doing in person as well, and making sure that you're covering that cost as well. Like you're not losing out by going online. You definitely want that position. So we tend to look at those prices, and then the last thing we tend to look at is like personal goals. So say, for example, I don't like use monetary goals, but it's easier for this one. So let's say there's certain things you want to do, like you want to have, you want to pay your mortgage off by the time you're 50, or you want to, I don't know, whatever, have like a family and have time with your family. Like you want to spend more time with your family and have your mortgage paid off. Let's go for those ones. And to do that, you're going to have to earn, say, 100 grand a year, and you don't want to be working more than 35 hours a week, for example. Unless you know those kind of things, again, you can't really price accordingly, because if you've got all these costs that you've got here, and then you think, okay, it's going to cost me £100 per client, so I'm going to charge it £150 for doing it. How many of those do you then have to sell to get anywhere near doing that? And can you sell enough of them to have that much time that you need to go and do it? So understanding what your actual goals are, not just financially, but also like how much time you want and what you want from your life is an important aspect of that as well. So we do a lot of training on this. Like we spend a lot of time working on these costs, on their actual goals that they want, in order to try and work out what their pricing should be. And that can give us a good idea then what it is we need to charge based on how many clients they want to get in or need to get in, whether that's realistic, whether that will help them get to their goals and all that kind of stuff. Because if it's not going to help you get to your own personal goals, don't do it. Literally as simple as that. Just don't do it. Like go get another job somewhere if you want to, because it needs to feed the lifestyle that you want. Otherwise, it's pointless. Like business is hard, whichever way you look at it. And as a PT, you're in your own business, and you've got to sometimes, well, a lot of time, put the effort in, put the hours in sometimes. And there's big ups and there's huge perks, but there's big downs as well. And it's important that you really understand what it is you want, and that everything is feeding towards that when it comes to pricing. Does that make sense? I know it's quite a lot to take in one go. Without showing anything, but it makes sense.
100%. I'm sure like people listening will be sort of hopefully be able to understand that as well. And again, I say to my guys, it's like I alluded to earlier, like, you know, you might have a Facebook group, you might send a weekly email, you've got app access, and then depending on the packages, you've got like this face-to-face contact, Zoom check-ins, you know, whatever. But again, funnily enough, I've done a post on this yesterday on Instagram where you've got to break it down, because it's no good saying, right, just for example, going back to like a face-to-face trainer, earning £25 an hour is a decent hourly wage. If you're standing there as a coach or a personal trainer, instructor, whatever, for £25 just for that hour, and you don't physically talk to them until they're booked in for another hour, £25 an hour is an all right wage. But it's when people charge silly low amounts like a package or face-to-face per session, whatever it is, and they charge that low amount because they're not thinking about the hour or so it takes to write the program, the emails that they then send, the text messages in between like one session to another, even booking them in, like I said, the admin type, customer service type stuff. Yes, it might only be a text message every now and then, but if you're doing that 20 times a day to 20 different clients, that's like hours of your day you're wasting.
Yeah.
So you've got to take into account all of these extra things. Like a Facebook group, the way I break it down is if you've got all your clients in a private Facebook group just for accountability, you're still turning up, even if it's just to put one tiny little post in a day, like, oh, hi guys, how's everyone doing? Next day, is everyone doing their steps? Don't forget, you've got to check in this week. That still takes time. So your time you need to be charging for. So if you're putting a bit of a cost on it, maybe say like £20 a month per client to run that Facebook group, then they've got the app access, which again could be another £20 a month on top. Your newsletter, maybe a tenner a month to send out sort of 2 newsletters to everyone. That's like 50 quid per client per month before you even put in the package that they're on, whether it's the ABC package. So you've got to have like that starting block, like I said, and you've got to value your time, and that's without selling any add-ons. I know like ebooks and clothing or whatever, as long as you're not selling any stupid weight loss shakes, it's fine.
Yeah.
There's always like
magic
added
tea.
ways. Exactly, I've got it. But like I said, it's sort of understanding, and it used to be a sales ploy of all these PT courses. I am one, and I don't do this as for mine, but it's like, earn upwards of 80 grand a year, your own boss. Live the laptop lifestyle. It's all well and good saying that, but they don't teach you how to break it down. And like I said, it's such a simple task of like, right, I want to earn, for example, like you said, just as it's a round number, 100 grand a year. I want to do 35 hours a week. That basically equates to I need to be earning X amount per hour. And then if you've got like packages, again, ABC, and there's a cost that's got to come out of that package. Like I said, it's not just like, £100, I'm going to earn £100. You need to pay yourself out of that £100 because you're a business. You need to take away any app access because you're paying for app access. You're paying for your email server. You're paying for, whatever. So you've got to sort of look at that £100. You might, again, just for easy maths, you might only be earning £50 out of that £100 yourself. So straight away, that's how many sessions or how many packages or how many things per month, per year you need to be aiming for.
I think it's
I'm sure you've got something. I've got something right in front of me which has got sort of sales figures and that on. And if you sort of only sell 10 packages in the first month, you need to roll it over. Right, this month I need to up it to 15. Next month, right, I'm back on 15. And you just got to track it. What's that saying? If it's not measured, you can't manage it, or something like that.
Yeah, what gets measured gets managed.
There you go, that one.
Yeah. It's one of my favourite things. Wrong way around. But yeah, it's so important. I mean, I think especially with certain courses and stuff, they do push a lot on turnover, like this overall number that you get at the end. And I think that's a lot of the time because a lot of the course, and a bit different these days. It's starting to get a bit better, but especially when I kind of first started out, I can remember some of the courses were all about the sales that you made and nothing else really. And sales and turnover really is vanity. I mean, that's literally what it is. Like the only thing that really matters truly, well, there's 2 things actually. There's profit and there's cash flow. And I think we need to, especially most PTs, especially in coaches, when they kind of get into this industry, they really need to understand the difference between turnover, what profit actually is, and also what cash flow is. I think when you understand the differences between those, and then how to manage things like turnover, profit, and cash flow, when you can manage that, it does make things a lot easier. Because, like you said, the numbers literally tell you everything. Like you can look at it and go, this month I've done this. I need to adjust this for the following month, and so on. Like you can do a lot of things when you look at those numbers. And I think that's something that's not really talked about a lot when we train to be PTs. I also think it's something that's not really expected a lot. Like I know a lot of people who've become PTs, and they go into it not really knowing that when they come out of the other side of their training, they're actually really going to become a business person. They're going to become an entrepreneur. It's very rarely, you get a few businesses that do it, will employ you, but 99% of the time you're working for yourself. You've got rent to pay. You've got your license to pay for you, depending on what you're doing. Like there's so much of these overheads you need to think about. And I do think there's a lot of these courses out there that don't really talk about that too much when it comes, especially like mentor courses and that kind of thing. They don't talk too much about that. It's more about tracking the sales figures and that kind of thing. I think, cash flow and profit's an important thing you need to look at and manage, especially cash flow. Cash flow's king for me. It's an important thing to manage. And it's a good way of actually finding out how your business works as well.
Yeah, exactly. I've done my course like 20 years ago, and it was, these courses don't even exist anymore. It was like 3 months intense, Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. And it was just sort of, absolutely drilled into you what you need to do to become a personal trainer. But looking back, I learned everything about anatomy and physiology and how to exercise in the gym, which was great, don't get me wrong. But then if I didn't have sort of like my personality, I would have walked away just like a textbook. I wouldn't have known how to speak to people, how to approach someone. Luckily, I was in hospitality before, so I sort of had a gift of the gab and sort of just, made it up as I went along type thing. But now, like you said, they've basically, most courses are taking that into an online model or a distance study model, and it's sort of, again, you sort of qualified in 6 weeks. Again, you come out knowing about anatomy and physiology. You don't know anything about business, how to take what you've learned and use it in real life. And that's why I started my own business, because having worked for some of the largest providers in the country, it was apparent that they were just becoming turntables of like, let's get people in and out as quick as possible.
Yeah, money-making machines, aren't they? Now?
Yeah, exactly. They couldn't care less whether you qualify or not, or what you do after you've left that classroom, as long as they've got your money. And it's like, well, see you later. Next, 20 people in, out, see you later. And that's why I thought, you know what, I can't be doing this anymore. I can't help people, because I was sort of giving more and more information to all my students on the courses and saying, oh, in real life, do this, or the workbook tells you this, but really you need to do this. And I thought, you know what, I can't carry on doing that. And obviously that's why I'm here today. But it's good now that, like, obviously having my own company, I can add additional stuff in there. So there's a few extra questions I've thrown into certain elements of, like, when we're talking about cash flow, like why do you need to know that? What's a lead generator? What's, all these sort of things that you're going to come out and, like I said, unfortunately, my company's called the PT Mentor UK, which is flipping annoying, because you see all these PT mentors and flipping sales gurus, and it's like, oh, bugger, they've got my name.
That's like the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly. They've called themselves what I've flipping called my business.
Yeah.
So some people might look at me and think, oh, I bet he's a flipping sales guru. But like, these companies exist because PT courses don't tell you the basics. With regards to sales,
all they need, most people just need the basics. They really do. Like the basics are so important. I also find that as well actually interesting. Like I love that you do that and that you offer the basics and go through those basics first. Kind of what I was talking about earlier. Unless you understand those basics, how are you going to build on top of it? Like, I mean, it's really bad. But I've had businesses for a while. Like I said, I've done the gym and stuff when I was quite young and got quite quickly into that. And luckily as well, the reason my dad was so overloaded is he's had a business, and it's a family business. It's in manufacturing. Believe it or not, they actually make they do plastic fabrications. They make guarding and medical incubators for viral testing. Believe it or not, so they're doing all right at the moment.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, but they did that caused a lot of stress, which got him into the position he was in the first place. But even from a very young age, he always taught me stuff like that. Like, I knew what a balance sheet was and the cash flow books were when I was like 13, 14 years old. So I was in a very lucky position when I first kind of got into this. But I was quite shocked at how many people didn't know that kind of stuff just because of the way I was brought up. And I think it's amazing that you're doing those kind of basics, because once you understand them, it's so much easier to build on that and start growing from that. And just, you can always go back to it. Like, if I ever feel like I'm lost, I don't keep a cash flow book all the time because there's softwares that do most of it. But there's still times today where I'm thinking, especially when I come to the end of the year, I might just do a little bit in the cash. I might even write it down still just to see what's happening, because I can get a really good mental feel for what's happening with the business by understanding literally what's coming in and going out on a daily basis, and just writing about it and think, oh, shit, I didn't really notice that there. Like, I didn't really realize that was being spent still on there, even though it's, it might be up there on the computer screen, but you don't notice it sometimes. So there's still times I do little things like that and go back to basics to try and get a better idea of where I'm at from a business point of view.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's the thing. And it's just sort of taking, again, sort of what they learn on courses and telling them how they're going to implement that in real life, and what they, again, like on the level 3s now, you do like food diaries, you do client consultations and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
And sometimes it's like you could even charge for that alone. Like, so, because not everyone's going to want personal training, and you see so many PTs saying, oh, I offer free taster sessions, I offer free consultations. Going back to what we were saying a minute ago, like, time is money. Like, why the hell would you offer something free? Oh, it's because they can see what I do, so I give them a 3-hour session. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Like, if you're doing that 20 times a week, that's like 20 hours of your life you're giving away for free. Why not do something like a lower ticket offer? I hate the word ticket. Like,
I assume it because everyone refers to it, but I don't particularly like the ticket name.
Even though I bloody put it on my Instagram post yesterday, but it's what, unfortunately,
what
is
people,
what people sort of resonate with at the moment, isn't it? But it's, again, you could sort of do something like a try before you buy type thing, but still charge for it. Don't sort of, you know, you can sort of sit down and talk to someone for an hour, get their routine in place, talk to them briefly about nutrition, give them something of interest, or send them to a link where they can download something of yours. Again, going back to like an ebook on calorie counting and sort of getting them on that model. So that's like you're sort of someone that doesn't want your service, but you could still charge 50, 60, 70 quid just for a consultation. They'll go away, maybe implement that stuff. If they get on with your sort of very, very cheap offer, guess what? They're going to come back and be like, oh, Ash, Carl, you know, I've done this, I've gone away 5 weeks, I've already lost like half stone. And then that's when they're in your sort of sales funnel, as it were, of sort of seeing what's next on the options.
There's a good psychological thing with that as well about paying for it. What we used to call it now, the proper name for it.
We don't. I say it's all the time. You don't value free, do you? Because
you don't value free. Yeah.
If you go and download, like I've done it, God knows how many times. I do it generally to sort of look at stuff and out of interest of sort of seeing what other people are doing and stuff like that. But if it's free, I'll probably download it and never even open it. And then I'll get flipping spammed by all their emails.
Yeah.
Again, if I was going to go and pay for something, like a good couple of £100, then I'd definitely read it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think even offering stuff at a low, like even the lower end stuff to bring people in to do something, like just that extra bit of value there, I think will make people want to pay attention to what you're actually offering them in the first place. I always try and compare. I mean, obviously, doctors and GPs and things are very different. And it's quite hard to maybe refer to this in the UK, but a lot of my clients are in the US as well. Well, obviously, they pay for they're going to get a consultation from a GP. They pay for it. You know, they go to a doctor for a consultation. They pay for it. And that's the same thing. We still pay for it. It's just the government pays for it through our national insurance, but they're still getting paid for doing it. You know, you don't go for a consultation with a GP, do you, to diagnose what's wrong with you, and they go, "Oh, it's free that. We're not going to charge the NHS for this, and I'm not going to get paid for doing it. You're just going to go and pay for your prescription or your operation or whatever after." It's just like, it's not how it is. Like you are there. A consultation like that done well will really help somebody progress to where they want to be. So there's nothing wrong with offering that in there. And I think before then, like you can do, like we talked about earlier, if you just generally want to try and help people as well, like that doesn't mean like if someone comes up to you in the gym and has a quick conversation where you say, no, you have to pay me some money whilst I'm talking to you. Like have a conversation, be a nice person. But if they want to take it to that next level, then there's nothing wrong with doing that. And I do find it quite interesting actually, because especially in the gym environment, that might be different these days. It's been a long time since I've like trained people on a commercial gym floor, but like then you could also differentiate yourself from them. Like I used to charge for consultations, like I used to do them for free. And with that, it's like I was one of the only people that ever did it, but it also made me kind of more exclusive to everyone else. So people that really wanted good results would come to us anyway, because they thought, well, there must be a reason why he's charging for that and no one else is. The problem, I know there was better PTs at that gym than what there was in me. I just decided to do it that way around. So I think there's other sides of it as well you can look into from a psychological point of view and a sales point of view, where charging does make it a bit easier.
No, definitely. And that's sort of like going all the way back to what we were saying sort of even earlier on. There's sort of, if you're giving out free value and you're telling them what they need to be doing for free on your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitter, your email, newsletter, whatever it is, if you're giving out that free information, when it does come to, I want to book in and have a consultation with you and sort of see what you've got to offer, you can charge for it because they're already getting all the free information. So if it was a case of you didn't put anything online and then you sat down and you gave them some free information, again, they're going to take the information, go away, implement it. So you've lost out on money and time. Whereas if everything's online and they're implementing stuff that you put up daily on Instagram and you're educating them daily on Instagram, for example, then they know that the next step up is like, well, if this is free, his paid stuff must be really good. So then when you do turn around and go, yeah, we can have a chat for an hour and a half, it's £85. You're going to get a program designed that you can go and carry out on your own for 4 weeks. Plus we'll go over your nutrition. Then they've got that decision to make. Do I want to carry on just looking at the free stuff and plodding along as I am? Or do I want to take that next step and do that? And then, like I said, then in that sort of session, You can either charge for them just for that one-off session, thank you very much, see you later, because they're happy on their own,
Yeah.
or you've got that hour and a half, whatever it may be, to not in a salesy way, like we said earlier, but then you've got to show them what you've got extra in your locker that's going to make them go, you know what, I want to work for you for the next 6 months, or whatever.
Yes.
But again, it's like they've got free, so don't sort of think that you need to keep on giving free.
No, definitely not.
The ones that are giving free consultations are the ones that are thinking, I haven't got time to go on Instagram, I haven't got time to do Facebook. It's like, that's your marketing in this day and age, isn't it? Like, you need to be doing that. Same with the gym floor. You can go and walk the gym floor, helping people with hints, tips, advice. Oh, I've seen you squatting there the other day. How was that? Did you feel that? I noticed you're leaning forward slightly. Try this next time. Giving them those little hints and tips, because then next time they're in the gym, they'll come up and go, oh, that squat thing you showed me the other day, that was perfect. I really felt that a lot more. And it's just planting that seed. Same with social media at the moment, isn't it?
Exactly the same. Just plant that seed, try and help wherever you can. But yeah, if they want more formal help, then you definitely should charge for it. It's used in, again, I don't like the word high ticket, but a lot of people that sell like high value stuff, they'll do something called what do they call it? Like a triage call, which is like a free thing. And the idea is that you'll have just like a 15, 20-minute chat, no sales, nothing, just to find out a bit more about each other. And then from there, you kind of recommend where you want to go. And it's kind of the same thing. It's like you have that little conversation like you might do on the gym floor. And then on there, you'll say, okay, we can go and do this session that's an hour and a half and all that stuff you just mentioned there. But you can do the same thing online. Triage session, maybe I'm not right to work for you, or we've got this lower thing offer you can go for, or I'll tell you what, let's jump back on the call in a week's time, go and have a think about it, but we can then talk about the higher price stuff. So like there's lots of options you can go from there to do it. So I don't think when you do anything like, especially like an hour long or anything longer than that, like you definitely want to be charging. Like anything more than like a 15-20 minute chat. I think you want to be charging for your time on that. I mean, we do the same thing. We have like a lot of people do like 5-day challenges, and one of the things we talk about is like a lead magnet thing you can offer people with value inside to bring people into things online. But then we have challenges that people can use sometimes to deliver them. A lot of people do free challenges, which is okay, but I still like charging for them. I mean, we do one every PTD Ninja, I should say, does one about every 3 months. And we charge for it. It's only a 5-day challenge, but we still charge to go and bring people in because of the value we're giving it. And it's exactly the same thing you said there. You charge, and it's the idea to move them up into the next program. And I'm always honest about that. I tell people literally in the 5-day challenge we do, like what we are doing now to you guys is what you guys should be doing to your clients, is watch what we do. And they all of them always upgrade to the next program. But it's like I think you should charge for those kind of things. I think it's important.
Yeah, definitely. Even if it's like a sort of £10 for a 5-day challenge, if you get 10 people, that's £100. Then on the last day, you upsell to your weekly, monthly package, whatever it may be. And if you get even just 2 people, that cheap little challenge has actually earned you a couple of grand.
Yeah. The best way to look at it is, again, if you structure your challenge right as well, like not taking up too much time, like if you use like a Facebook group, lives inside there, you might do a 30-minute live a day for 5 days. So it's costed you only a couple of hours a week really to doing it, and maybe messaging a few people to say maybe 10 hours that week it might have cost you. Probably still cheaper than putting loads of money into advertising and things like that to bring people on. And if you move into a membership, like a membership structured program, then your lifetime value of those clients, see if you just move 2 or 3 of them over, definitely makes it worthwhile.
No, exactly. Definitely. I feel like we've gone off on a massive tangent, Ash, which is great.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. It's my fault. I'm in charge. I should be leading you down a certain path in my questioning, but I don't. I just think, like, if it interests me, I'm like, let's just have a chat. Get them on the podcast. So
it could be worse. You could have started talking about Marvel or something.
the weather. Everyone's in Dubai.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is wrap it up, but to get back on the reason why you're on the podcast in the first place, getting them back towards what you offer. Where can we send people to come and join you on some of your training, to learn more about what you can do for PTs? Where can we send people?
Cool. So there's 2 places you can go to. If you want to find out more about PTD Ninja, you can just go to ptdninja.com, and there's loads of stuff on there. There's some free stuff on there as well. You've got access to the masterclasses, which are funded by PT Distinction, so they're free to you guys if you want them. There's also things like the PT Ninja course on there as well if you want to take a look at that. But that's the best place to go, ptninja.com. Or, of course, you can come join us on the PT Distinction Facebook group as well.
Cool, perfect. I'll put the link to PTT Ninja in the show notes.
Awesome, thank you.
And I'll just leave it there and say, Ash, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
No, it's been awesome. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much. Cheers, everybody. Mate. Thank you. All right.